There's so much that goes into retreats, and I call them immersions. Really, when you think about an immersion, I think about embodiment. You're immersing all aspects, the wholeness of yourself in that energetic, potent container that is going to be alchemizing, healing, a mirror. It was a full on energetic activation, immersive experience. In this place of spaciousness, I'm surrendering to God, surrendering to divine wisdom around how I'm meant to show up as an instrument. But for me, it's about just the humble, dedicated path of being an instrument of the divine, of healing, of transformation. Show me where to go, show me what to do, show me who to meet, show me how to show up in my medicine in the most authentic way. So the shedding has allowed for that, that spaciousness to really be however I'm guided. I'm going to show up and just be.
Yes, and it is a potent moment in your world.
Yes.
So it's so easy, right, to be like, yes, humanity is going through a shadow to light moment. It's so clear if you're
Mhm.
halfway away, and yet it doesn't take away from just the extraordinary waters you've been traversing with such honor and such presence and surrender and courage and strength and grace. Well, hey there, and welcome back to Fire and Soul. I'm so happy that you're here on this planet and walking this path. And I'm really excited to share in this conversation with you. I've got my dear sister, Lena Franklin, in the house, modern medicine woman, psychotherapist, just extraordinary being. And this conversation got inspired because Lena has been hosting spiritual retreats around the world for a long time. And I'm newer in the game, a few years in, but it's the deepest medicine I've been served and that I have the honor to serve. And I just said, gosh, there's not enough people talking about this. What do you think that, about having a conversation? He's like, but before we go there and we do a reintroduction of you from joining us about a year ago, and it's just so good to have you back. I also wanted to welcome those who are new to the show. I know that we've got quite a few people that are finding fire and soul right now, and I couldn't be more grateful that you are here taking the time to tune in. This is the path of awakening, and this show, like so many other things in life, it's going through its own rebirth, its own awakening, and so what feels most resonant for me right now is that just awakening to whatever the deepest truths are within me, and sharing that authentically and honestly, and oftentimes courageously. And so I'm just awakening to so much and letting go of even more. And it just feels right to just stay right here and not try to worry about rebranding Fire and Soul or who's the ideal listener or viewer. It's just like the energies are magnetizing you. And I'm just so happy that you are here. And so for that, I also wanted to say I do not normally have just this blank background. I'm trying to sort out where I want to record with the podcast in my home, and I'm trying out this room because it feels really good. And so that's why I don't have anything that feels cozy, but we're present and we're here, and that's what really matters. It's all around the quality of the connection. So I hope you stay tuned for all of it because Lena's also going to share some invitations and offerings that she has that feel very aligned. I'm not an affiliate, but just like gorgeous offerings. And then I'll share about mine. And if you've been curious about how to curate your own retreat experiences or immersive experiences for your community, or you would like to hear more about what that might mean, or you've been doing it and it hasn't quite felt maybe the way that you thought it should feel, you're right on track. But this is a conversation that we hope really grounds the experience. We have she has even more, but just a wealth of experience so far, and offers different perspectives and things to consider, yes, as you may embark on this journey yourself. So with that long intro, Lena, hi. How are you,
Thank
my
you.
sister?
Oh, so good. Grateful to be back. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so good to have you back. It's Lena's second time. We'll link the first visit in the show notes. Just a little quick intro on that. I first heard you on the Ceremony Circle podcast with Allison Charles, who is the shaman and author, co-author of Animal Power. Everyone knows that's one of my favorite books. And I was just so blown away by you and how you guys talked about the distinctions in shamanism of a practitioner and a facilitator. That part really, really struck me. And just your presence, your beautiful energy. And then I found you and I was like, she's stunning because it was audio in the beginning. Yeah. So, and then we've developed this beautiful friendship and it just feels so good to have you here. You are a sister to me and I just honor you so deeply. And so where do you want to pick up? Like wherever you feel called to drop in just to kind of what's alive and juicy for you to share as a reintroduction or for those who haven't had a chance to connect with you yet.
Yeah, gosh, there's so many different portals we could go into right now. Um, I feel called to really get be authentic and get grounded in the truth that we are all in this collective alchemization, and I've been over the past, I was sharing with you, on various calls that we've had, but I'm emerging from a 16-year cycle, really a 16-year dark night of the soul where
Mm,
I was, I've been traversing the underworld and from my Peruvian lineage, from the Caro, we call that the Uku Pacha. So I've been in the Uku Pacha facing my shadow over and over and over, beginning with my mom's death,
mm,
when she passed very suddenly at the age of 57. So my portal was grief and the existential questions that we ask ourselves when someone very dear to us passes what we perceive as prematurely. And so I've been in that, been through a pretty tumultuous divorce, really leaving a relationship that was the mirror of my attachment to what people thought of me on the external and my perfectionistic patterns. The creation, finding, connecting with my divine partner, the
mm,
creation of one of the most beautiful communities and organizations
mm,
that worked with plant medicine and different forms of ancient healing, the death of that organization, the
mm,
letting go of
mm,
a future and a reality you thought you would live,
mm,
and shedding friendships and community and recalibration. And so I feel like I've been in this perpetual death rebirth cycle for 16 years. And so I feel the emotion moving through me. It feels like this incredible moment of emerging
mm,
from the darkness
mm,
into really the vastness of the unknown.
mm,
And there's, in the psychology world, we call it blank slate. So in this space, in the Buddhist world, we call it the empty cup. In this place of spaciousness, I'm surrendering to God, surrendering to divine wisdom around how I'm meant to show up as an instrument. And we can call it all sorts of things, medicine woman, transpersonal, psychotherapist, entrepreneur, global leader, all these things that you may see on my bio or on my LinkedIn. But for me, it's about just the humble, dedicated path of being an instrument of the divine, of healing, of transformation. Show me where to go, show me what to do, show me who to meet, show me how to show up in my medicine in the most authentic way. So the shedding has allowed for that, that spaciousness to really be, you know, however I'm guided, I'm going to show up and just be. And so I feel a deep level of tenderness right now. I feel a deep level of um, just reverence for life right now.
mm,
So I'll pause there, but it's been a long path, and I want to kind of speak to those who may be listening, whatever you're going through, whatever's emerging for you, whatever challenges um, you're facing, it is it is love. It is your soul's choosing, and it is the love that God and the divine, creates for you through sharpening the diamond, right? Under pressure, or creating the pearl in, we were talking about this too, in the oyster, that irritation, the luminescence that emerges from the darkness. So it's a potent moment in my world, and it's just a reflection of what's going on in the collective.
Yes, and it is a potent moment in your world.
Yes.
So it's so easy, right, to be like, yes, humanity is going through a shadow to light moment. It's so clear if you're
Mhm.
halfway awake, and yet it doesn't take away from just the extraordinary waters you've been traversing with such honor and such presence and surrender and courage and strength and grace. It's beautiful to witness as your friend and as someone who's only known you for what, a year?
Mhm.
Um, and even the distinction of how you shared from a year ago to now, it's just I really felt that whole journey that you took us through. And there's just so much honor for this, the evolution of your soul. It's like,
Thank
all right, God, I know you got me. We were talking before I hit record, and I'm like, okay, the
you.
coral, the grit, all of this is so good. And I was at this sound medicine experience last night with some wonderful friends here in Austin, and someone had said, as we were talking about this big pivotal moment that humanity is experiencing, those of us who come in with these 16-year, journeys into the dark night, et cetera, it's like, this is the advanced package.
Right. Fast track it.
Let me just get like 7,000 lifetimes of shadow work done in one life before I'm like 40 years old. I imagine. I don't even know if you're 40 yet.
I'm 40 and I have so much gray hair.
Oh, I hear you. But speaking of the shedding, one of the things that I really bonded with you on as well, and this was like a year ago, so I can barely relate to this version of myself, but yet I still remember her, intimately. And it was, you talked about, shedding the perfectionism, which I know will always come up for both of us. It's been a beautiful teacher, right? But it does get better as we continue to live, and walk these planes, in my experience. But it's like even just letting go of like some of the external stuff, like for me, hair extensions of 20 years, lash extensions, Botox.
Yeah, same.
Having my nails done every single week, they had to be perfect. I mean, the cuticles had to be perfect, or I couldn't even go out into the world, or being a perfect size of like, or I just couldn't even show up. And it's such a different experience. And I'm really grateful to be settling into this newer level and this newer sense of like who I really am, the most authentic version of myself, and allowing my essence to shine through that far outweighs in moments, not all, any of the old external. And
Absolutely.
right, you're there too.
Right there. Yeah, I took the extensions out, lash hair. I haven't gotten Botox for like a year. Um, and
It's a big deal.
it's interesting. And I made a post today about this, the symbolism around it's not about the extensions, it's not about the Botox. It's about my relationship with it at the time,
Yes.
and what was it symbolizing for me?
Hmm.
The good at the not good enough,
Yes, totally.
old residual thought patterns, or comparison mindset. And so, it's interesting just to feel the essence of yourself radiating through without so many veils, in front of it.
All the filters. I know.
Yeah.
I still use some filters in my stories. I'm not going to lie. Not every day, but when I feel that I want to, I just allow it to be.
Exactly. And there's, I also honor, and this is a big part of, it's a part of our connection too, the peacock medicine,
Yes, yes,
being unapologetic about appreciating and being the creator of beauty in
yes.
this world. And so, part of it is that, I love putting on makeup and, having beautiful lighting, and I love aesthetics. And there's something about beauty that is
Mm.
directly connected to the divine. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of our such a sweet connection in that core power animal of peacock. Another shout out to Alison Charles's incredible book, Animal Power, that the animals wrote through her. You know, she allowed herself to be the vessel, and Peacock was my core power animal all of 24. And
Mm.
she's still there. She's like, I just bought a stool. I sent you a photo. It was like, I found a stool that actually is the same stool that one of my dear friends, Sloan, who'll be actually coming on the show again shortly. And I saw that she had that stool on a retreat that I was at of hers recently to hold sacred space for her women one night. And I was like, I have to have a stool. It's Peacock. And she's like, Home Goods. I'm like, what? I went to Home Goods and it was there. There was one. I was
My God.
like, okay, this was supposed to be. Yeah.
Meant to be.
Peacock energy medicine. Also, what I remember about peacock energy medicine, and thank you for reminding me about the beauty, because yes, yes, and amplify that. But it was also cultivating such deep self-love that you do shine your most authentic light.
Mhm.
And that's where I'm just like, like this is that energy actually gave me the courage to start talking about like the sovereign spaces and the equity law and status correction that people may not realize watching or listening right now, but that took a lot of courage for me, because it's like, what will people think? Do they think I've lost my mind? Am I some crazy tinfoil hat wearer? Like, but it's like, no, actually, it's been the opposite. People were
Mhm.
like, girl, thank you. I've been looking for this. This was so exquisitely done. Like, all of that. And not that I needed that, but it sure was nice to hear it, because I had to go through all the parts of myself that were in resistance or fearful. I had to meet those edges in order to release it. So I had already alchemized. So then to hear some of the reflections back were like, oh, cool, thanks, but I had done it. And
Mhm.
so Peacock could just bow,
Yeah.
bow,
Yes. Yes. As, no separation, as within, so without. So it's
divine
all,
love.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I'm excited to talk about retreats, because I don't know much about, what goes on for you in curating these experiences. I just know that I've seen them from afar. I know that this was one of the things that I remember first seeing about you after listening to you on the Ceremony Circle podcast with Alison Charles, probably a year and a half ago. And I just love that conversation.
Mhm.
And then you had amazing guests on your show, and I think it's currently on hiatus. Is that right?
It's, yeah, exactly. It's also peeking out of the ground to also in reemergence. So
Okay.
medicine wisdom will probably be relaunched this year.
Okay, cool. I didn't even know that. That makes me happy to hear. But I remember you having a conversation with Marianne Williamson, and
Mhm.
while I am not in alignment with her politically, I definitely have loved learning from her in many ways. And honestly, I'm not aligned with anyone politically. I know better, but like, she's just doing her best to just get her message out there. But there was this urgency in
Yeah.
in that conversation, and I felt it. And it's beyond the political realm for me, but it's like it's go time for us. And I know that that's for you, and it's for me. And this is why we keep doing the work, and it's why we hold these incredible immersive experiences. And I want to honor you for calling it an immersion over retreat. And we'll talk about that and why in a moment. But I just feel like these are so essential to put ourselves into these nourishing, um, hopefully well held containers to drop into the safety and to the wisdom of our souls, and to be in community that we need, and these in-person events, and just the healing of just even the sister wound alone, because I hold women's retreats. I think you do some co-ed here and there. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought maybe where I would start is kind of like what you and I were talking about behind the scenes. And I'll be very honest, I just looked this up on the Google, and it was like how things to consider, when crafting a women's spiritual retreat. I just wanted to see what the Google would have to say. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good list. And then you and I added a little bit more to it. So I'm just going to read that high level, and then let's just kind of see where that takes us.
Perfect.
Okay,
Beautiful.
so high level, and I won't go into the details because there are lots if you're looking at this on video. It says when creating a spiritual women's retreat, key considerations include defining a clear theme or focus, catering to diverse spiritual needs. Everyone's at a different stage, right? Levels of experience, presence to that. Providing space for reflection and personal connection, incorporating a balance of structured activities and relaxation time, prioritizing community building, selecting a suitable location, considering dietary restrictions, and ensuring accessibility for all participants, all while aiming to create a safe and supportive environment for women to deepen their spiritual practice and connect with themselves and each other. Then you wanted to add a couple of things, and I wanted to add a couple of other things. Do you want to share that here?
Sure. Yeah. So that's a pretty good list. I
Pretty good
actually
list.
pretty good list.
Google.
There's so much that goes into retreats and yeah, so I call them immersions, and Michelle and I were talking. Really, when you think about an immersion, I think about embodiment, that you're immersing all aspects, the wholeness of yourself in that energetic potent container that is going to be alchemizing, healing, a mirror. So that immersive energy is, I feel like immersion just it encompasses what I create more accurately. And so yeah, adding to that list, I see even before the business pieces. So my soul went to like, you got to do this. And then all the other aspects built on top of it to create the structure.
Mhm.
So it's, I see it as a soul journey, a pilgrimage. And it could be a pilgrimage to a place that's an hour down the road or across the world. It doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
It is a gravitational magnetic pull to a certain container. I fully believe that before your soul incarnated into this meat suit that is you, that your soul made a choice to be in that circle, in that group of souls,
Mm.
long before you came into human form.
Mm.
Purpose of the co-creation of that container, the soul retrievals that will happen in that container, the collective healing that will happen in that container. And so I feel, as you open up the question, I feel like that's the core, that's the essence, that's the foundation of it all. And it could be a day, it could be a weekend, it could be, a month-long immersion or retreat. And we'll get more granular with it. But at its essence, I feel like it's a soul journey. And I know that that resonates with you too, because that's the type of container you hold.
Yeah, it
Mm.
really is. And by the way, this is not the kind of container that everybody wants.
Right.
I'm fairly certain, though, that most of the women who, because it's almost all women who
Mhm.
tune into fire and soul, that is on some level what you are seeking. And what I've also found, at least from my own experience, is that most of the women that have joined me, at least for their first time on retreat, they don't typically do those types of things.
Mhm.
This might be new for them. They've never done anything like that. They might not know anyone else there. And so the
Mhm.
first night, they're pretty convinced they've made a huge mistake.
Right.
And they need to go home. I mean, no one's actually ever vocalized that, but they've shared like the next day, like, I was planning my escape, right? Send a little text in the middle of the night. Sorry, gotta go. I had some emergency come up. And it's because being in a relational dynamic is where the medicine is, especially
Mhm.
with other women. And so, and sometimes we've gotten so comfortable to exclude ourselves from community, to hide out, to not be in proximity with other physical beings, especially as we live in more and more and more in the digital era.
Mhm.
And this is why just being around other humans is so healing, especially when it feels safe and sacred and it's really well held. So I
Mhm.
just want to speak to that because there are some experiences where you're just like, I just want to go and like water surf or, you know what I mean? Go hike some trails, but you're always going to be in relational dynamic no matter what. And
Exactly.
so for me, I like the fast track like you. I mean, it's been a lot of dark nights for me as well. So this particular, journey on earth, I mean, we chose a very wild time to be here. So it's like, I don't want to fuck around. Like, let's just go all in.
Right. Get it done.
I don't want the easy surfacey stuff. Like, I mean, I can make it be joyous and fun and light always, but
Mhm.
I need like a balance. I want it all on the sort of buffet of options, right?
Totally. Yeah. I like to say I want to go very vertical. I want to be up in the cosmos, but we're going down as well. And
Yes.
There's a direct correlation. We were talking about this too. There's a direct correlation between our willingness, our capacity to go deep into the ukupacha, the underworld, the shadow, and directly correlated with our ability to receive the light of, God, of the bliss consciousness that we talk about, that people, we all desire, we all desire happiness and joy and expansion and meaning and fun and play.
Yes,
So,
yes.
it's all rich, it's all there. And it's
All
all in these containers.
absolutely, absolutely. Okay, let's start with theme and focus. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on theme and focus. And also, can you give a bit of perspective? I know I mentioned it at the top, but like, how long have you been guiding, leading, co-facilitating, however you feel that is the term or how you reference it,
Yeah.
retreats, and give us an idea of some of the areas that you've been called to.
Yeah, so I've been guiding retreats and immersions for a little over a decade. So about 11, 12 years. I believe I guided my first one. I started with, like many people do, day-long retreats and then did a weekend in a beautiful wellness community outside of Atlanta, and then expanded a bit. And my first, we'll call it travel type of retreat, was in Santa Fe, which is a dear place to my heart.
Mhm.
And then from there, and we talked about this, my soul is not fucking around in this lifetime, if we can curse on your show.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So I went from that to guiding longer retreats in Asia, in Bali, Thailand, Vietnam, India, Sri Lanka. Those are some of the places that I've taken people. And at that time, earlier on, I'll say the first half of my retreat guiding journey, I called them mindfulness or meditation vacations, because they were very mindfulness focused. They were meditation focused because of where we were going. We were going to really the homeland of my Buddhist ancestors, and of meditation and mindfulness, and really diving into the spiritual energy of those practices. So they're always spiritual in nature. The different focal points really depended on where we were going. So for example, going to Thailand for the Festival of Lights, really talking about the illumination of our soul through stillness, through the portal of stillness and silence.
Mm-hmm.
They're all similar but different thematically, and also sometimes they were curated around holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Like a beautiful holiday in Bali where the whole, you know, everyone is silent for a full day. So we did, more of a silent retreat that day. And yeah, so just over a decade, and they've evolved from, meditation is my foundation spiritually, from my mother's lineage. And moving from there, entered into more of the shamanic realm. So learning about plant medicine, earth medicines, going more to South America. So then began guiding more shamanic type of immersions to Peru, especially, which is one of my beautiful soul homelands.
Mm-hmm.
Those are different. This is where I started using the word immersion, because it was a full on, energetic activation, immersive experience. And it's really not that restful when we go to Peru, because we're going to sacred sites every day. You're receiving initiations and transmissions every day. So it's very energetically taxing because of
Mm-hmm.
the amount of potent energy you're receiving and you're integrating in your body,
Mm-hmm.
in addition to an optional ayahuasca ceremony. So calling it a retreat would be an inaccurate, and I say this is work. This is like spiritual, training. You're going down there, like
Yeah,
it's warrior training down there.
yeah.
The way that we move through it. And then there's other ones that I guide, and we're at one resort the whole time. And it's more yin, there's more spaciousness, there's more stillness. So
Mm.
yeah, they vary depending on the land, the intention, the vision. So,
Such beautiful diversity. Yeah, I remember also when you know what this list didn't cover was pricing.
oh, okay. Yeah,
We got
we'll
to cover that because we had a discussion on that, and I've been talking about pricing with another very close friend of mine, Bonnie, lately, and it's been very expansive and illuminating to say the least.
mm,
But yeah, I remember when I also had, now I was like looking up everything Lena Franklin. Like I really, my spirit knew. I didn't know we'd be friends. Well, actually, no, it's true. I did tell a girlfriend of mine, I think we're going to be friends. I
I
did
love.
have that thought. I was like, I think we could be friends. And but it just happened organically, and anyway, but I remember looking at your website and you were talking about Expand Peru. And then there was also a mention of this trip to Belize, which I believe you're doing again this year in 25. And it was called Quintessence, which I think you're doing a similar type of experience. And I saw that and I was like, of course, each woman has her own room, right? It's like all of it was just so elevated. It was so yin, it was so divine feminine. And it was all around really embodying like the divine feminine leadership qualities, right? And standing in your true power and knowing your power. And that's the sense that I got. And then I
Mhm.
saw your packaging rates and it was so much more than I was charging at the time. And I was so inspired. You became this expander for me of possibility. And I was just like, wow, like, could I ever do that? And it seems so crazy to say that today because that is now where I am. But I also know that there's so much more that I'm expanding into. So we'll get to pricing beyond that. And so our view, like, but it was just like such an important, yeah, medicine for me to see and with all your beauty and just your wisdom. And I was like, it was so complete and beautifully, like aesthetically beautiful too, by the way, your marketing packaging.
Thank you. Yeah, fully receiving that.
Mm.
And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes
Oh.
around pricing piece. I mean, I over the years have had to stand in the mirror
Mm.
and talk about my pricing to myself until my voice didn't shake. It's like embodying the frequency of your value,
Yes.
even in the face of, a lot of people are going to say that's too expensive or, whatever the misalignments are, not good or bad, but just, there's an essence that a frequency, a vibration that has to be embodied in order for you to plan, execute, pull off and run a successful retreat immersion that's impactful and, lucrative.
Yeah.
And there's Aini there, the sacred reciprocity of how much energy you put into creating these experiences. Aini, Ayni. I think we've talked about this. The reciprocity of receiving that money energy
Mm.
as value, and you can't really put a price on. This is what I believe. You can't really put a price on your value, right? But there's still a reflection there of energetic exchange that's needed.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of richness in there.
So much richness, and I'm with you, that nuanced of it's not necessarily that you're putting a number on your value, your inherent value or worth, but also when we look at like 16 years of a dark night for you,
Mm.
multiple awakenings for myself, multiple dark nights, and all the other successes which come as a result of those, going deep in the vertical aspect of life, right, that we're so here for. So then what radiates out oftentimes in this soft presence and, just sort of who we be at all of these different iterations, that is where I've learned to, and I am right now in the middle of it, stepping more fully into, well, what does that feel like then? What is that number if we have to, because we're living in,
Right,
3D-ish, Earth, what is the exchange on that?
right.
And so one of the practices that my dear friend Bonnie took me through recently is like to expand into, like, this is especially for, I'll just segue for a moment, private mentorship client rates, expanding into a number that just feels, wow, that would be incredible to say that, to experience that, to feel that, and to feel good about that. And then having that, which is probably more like still seems like, whoo, that feels far off. But then going back to where you currently are, you're like, oh, that is so not it
Mm,
anymore.
mm,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
And just feeling and playing with that because it's all just made up.
It's all just made up.
Yeah. I want to share something because I feel like this is going to be useful and I'm happy to be transparent about it.
Mm,
So I run a retreat twice a year called Soul Essence Retreat, and I know there's other collaborations coming for me, and I'm super excited about that. And and I love Soul Essence. And my retreat is Thursday night through Monday morning, and it's one night of medicine, and it's a private chef, all inclusive, luxury estate accommodations, just like really just believe beautifully curated. And we're going to talk about some of those details. And a dear friend of mine runs basically the same retreat Thursday night, Monday morning, one night of medicine, same chef as it turns out, same chef. So quality of food is the same, accommodations are on par. My investment is anywhere from 3 to 4K. Hers is 10 to 12K.
wow.
She expanded into that. That feels good for her. She sells her retreats out.
Mhm.
It's just interesting, isn't it?
So,
And so, and she would say it herself, she's no more evolved or, it's just that's a number that she expanded into for herself. And
mhm.
so, this pricing and worthiness conversation and energetic conversation that really wants to be had, this is really at the heart of it because retreat businesses can be quite lucrative, as you mentioned. I mean, I'm now doing six figures in retreat business globally, right? That's gross for me. There's going to be expenses, but it's 2 long weekends a year. And
Mhm.
it's one of my favorite things that I get to do. And yes, a lot goes into it. It's like planning a small wedding in many ways, but you do get better at it with time.
That's right. That's
And so it's that sweat equity in the beginning. And then from there, it's just like, oh, okay, like who's magnetized to this portal and
Mhm.
what's going to emerge. And so I'll just pause there before we kind of go back to where we started 10 minutes ago. But is there anything that wants to come up for you around, or is any additional stuff coming up around pricing or value or worthiness and any of that?
Yeah, so I was having this conversation actually with one of my dear friends, Phoenix, who I can't wait
Mhm.
for you guys to connect, but she's an amazing speaker and author and healer and medicine woman, just multifaceted.
Mm.
Um, and just candidly, so we're guiding a retreat, an immersion to Egypt this April, and it's completely sold out. I mean, it's beautiful. Some of my clients and her clients and just people in our communities, and we had to have multiple conversations around this because we were coming from different lenses, different vantage points, different areas of service to various populations of people and various communities of people. So we really found a middle path in our collective pricing. But what it did, kind of at the core of our connection and our co-weaving, was it opened each of our lenses to something, to a different way of approaching this. There are, and for me, I can speak for myself, for me, there are some retreats, immersions where I'm much more attuned to the revenue piece.
Mhm.
And that's one of the primary intentions, right behind service. And then
Mhm.
there's others where it's it's more purely service, and that piece is, of course, managed and tracked, but it's not one of the primary focal points.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
what is the intention of that retreat container that you're offering? What is what's your ideal client or the populations that you're serving? And it can vary, for with the money piece, it can vary, and it really doesn't matter because it is all made up, it's all arbitrary. But I can say that I've had to grow into the ownership of continuing to charge what I felt like was an abundant energetic exchange monetarily for what I was putting in,
Yes. I
especially for those. retreats where, yes, it was part of kind of the suite of my offerings, retreat business. Really the intention is for it to be lucrative and to make money and to be of service. But
Mm,
it's taken time, and what I will say in the inner work piece, a lot of purging and releasing from the first, second, and third chakras,
yes.
where I had, we'll call it maladaptive attachments to different survival-based fears or unworthiness belief systems, um, money entangled in my sense of unworthiness, and just really
Mm,
unpacking those more nuanced blocks that I was feeling as I was in my proactive up leveling.
mm, mm. So beautifully said.
Yeah,
I
there's a lot.
feel that deeply.
Yeah.
Also, okay, before we get back to this list,
Mhm.
you know what I shifted recently, and I don't know if you even do this, we've never talked about this. I used to lead retreats always knowing there was an inherent offering that would be woven in of mine that was like an upsell to all the women on retreat, usually some sort of a mastermind experience.
Mhm.
And I did that, I think, 4 different times. I'm never doing that again.
Mhm.
I didn't do it the last time. And it was such a distinction in terms of how I felt. There was no other focus other than being completely present with
Mhm.
our participants, our guests, our community, our sisterhood. And in the past, it was always back there of like, when's a good time to bring it up? Like it just, and not wanting to interrupt their flow, but yet at the same time feeling like, no, this is a container that I set. I have every right to bring up a deeper invitation should those who are here want to go further. And it was like none of that feels aligned anymore for me at all.
Yeah.
And it felt corrosive, to be perfectly candid. For me, I don't know how they felt, but it's like while they're there, they're in the energetic, they are so open. And so, of course, the mindset from old Tony Robbins coaching um, is like get them when they're in the zone. And it's
Mhm.
like, wait, hold up. If I really trusted my medicine and if I trusted what's been served in these containers, they're going to come to me for what else do you have? Or
Right.
where else may we go deeper? Or tell me about your other offerings, right? So is any of that resonate for you, or did you ever operate that way? Or tell me your journey.
So it's interesting because for a while I had the thought that I needed to operate that way. See, I came from more of the therapy world,
Yeah.
which has its own kind of, we'll call it foundational scarcity, collective psyche dynamics. So I feel like what you're sharing, the upsell and really weaving in that invitation to mastermind, for example. I mean, that comes, this is generalizing, but more from the coaching space.
Yes.
So I always felt like I needed to get on my game and have something else to offer. But honestly, um, it's always felt at the core aligned to focus on that container. Um,
Mm.
and that's just the way, I feel like I've grown into being, a grounded and successful businesswoman, but it wasn't what I wouldn't have said in past years it was my area of strength. But now I'm seeing, oh, I was actually in these different ways, I was following my intuition especially around these particular containers. But I love that you share that because, I've had a lot of clients go to different retreats and experience the retreat and then experience that. Some took that masterclass offer, and then others came back with the feedback that it felt energetically disruptive.
Yes.
So I love that you're following, your own evolution with it.
Yeah, and also because for those who are not called to be interested or curious about that upsell in the midst of the event that they've just invested in, right? And who knows what they organized in their lives to be there.
Right.
It's like then there can be like this feeling of, God, I don't even want to look her in the eye, or like, you know what I mean? Like getting in almost like uncomfortable about being in a shared intimate space when you've clearly not expressed interest, and like, does that person have to say something like, thank you for the offer, but right, it's like all of that is just, it doesn't feel fair
Yeah. Yeah.
in a really sacred container for me. I'm not judging, obviously, this method because I understand it. I know what drove it, the energetic, fuel that drove it, all of which you were speaking about a moment ago. And I've also done it. So I've done it all. And to be here now and just in this total trust in
Mm.
moments of that God's got me and my mission, and I'm so well supported, guided at all times, right? Like it's just it's a beautiful dance, and I couldn't be more grateful.
I feel called to reflect that what I'm seeing in this shift and evolution is you simply embodying your divine feminine power
Mm,
versus that old paradigm, the way, you you would offer the upsell in the moment feels like more of the masculine paradigm. So it's like hey, just like you said, if someone's interested, you're going to naturally magnetize those clients who are going to continue with you. And thank you, because that's a reminder for me, as you're saying it, like, and that's enough.
enough. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, let's come back. Theme and focus. What type of considerations do you consider for theme and focus?
So I feel I this is a really intuitive process for me. Um, I feel into the energy of the land. I feel
Yes.
into if there's already a co-facilitator that's on board or that I've connected with. Um, and I ask. I just ask. I open my crown, I ground deeply, I open my crown, I connect with whoever I know is going to be a part of that container. If I know we're going to sacred sites or certain locations, I'll connect with the energy of that location. I just ask what theme, what intention wants to be part of the holding space thematically for this particular group. And
Mm.
always something always comes. I'm like, all right. Sometimes at first my ego agrees, and sometimes I'm like, really? That? So for example, we were talking about Belize, which I'm doing again this year, quintessence, which is the rainbow body. It's your pure energetic soul essence.
Yeah.
It got tweaked slightly, and it's because the land and my co-facilitator Rosario, who's a beautiful Mopan Maya medicine woman, it it wanted to be more medicine woman focused, and it's still divine feminine leadership, but it's also about activating that particular archetype within the women who feel called and choose to attend. Medicine woman being your medicine, and not just serving plant medicine or psychedelics, but what is your medicine? What is that unique blueprint, that gift you're meant to share with the world to serve your community or move the masses, however it wants to move through you.
Mm.
So yeah, going back to your question, it's about asking, opening and asking. For me, that's how I do it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And also you shared about like, for example, focus around the distinction of like, okay, Peru versus Belize, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Egypt. And so I feel like we really covered that. So I'm going to move on to the next theme because that was so beautifully expressed. Participant needs and diversity. And we're not just talking about dietary restrictions, which you and I were chatting before I hit record. Like, it's nothing better than to reach out directly to each participant and saying, what should we be considering? Or do you have any, food restrictions or allergies? And then receiving that list and really honoring that for each person and just taking it to the chef if you're blessed to have a chef. And um, but also equitable accessibility and right considering all things. And I'll share one example. And I'll just continue. And then catering to the range of spiritual backgrounds and levels of experience, either on retreat or just even in those types of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't dumb anything down, and that's not what this is sort of lending itself to. It's really staying potent in the integrity of the message that wants to come through, and trusting that those who've agreed on a soul level to be there are going to receive it at whatever level they're meant to, but also just being aware of like just some things. For example, the last retreat I had, there was this long, windy, sort of downhill. I didn't think too far, but that's me and the level of my experience to go down to a water ritual. And there were a couple of women that had expressed that they didn't want to walk that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how in the world had I not considered saying, hey, and for those of you who would like a ride, we'll have someone out here in the SUV, right? Like, so they don't even have to say anything.
Right.
Just those little details that can make someone feel so seen, so held, and not have to go through like this sort of uncomfortable moment of feeling sensitive about saying, I don't know if I can walk that
Mm-hmm.
or walk back up it, especially in the night when we would be coming back when it's dark. So
Mm-hmm.
just being so consciously aware. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share on participant needs and diversity. But what else is coming through for you?
Oh, that's uh, what, how much time we got? What's coming through, well, initially with that story is so when I guide the Expand Peru immersion, the annual immersion, we go to a beautiful town in the Sacred Valley called Pisac.
Oh,
And
I've been amazing.
yeah. So I don't know if you hiked the mountain there. Okay.
Mm.
I have amnesia every time I plan this trip that I forget to tell people about this hike. And they know we're doing that we're on the mountain, we're in the temples, we're gonna hike down, but it's pretty strenuous
Mm.
hike down. And it just totally slipped my mind. Especially
Mhm.
I'm thinking about this last trip in 2024. And one of my beloved clients, who is such a rock star, she is a personal trainer, her and her daughter, they've both been long-term clients and students. Um, but let's see, she must be in her early 70s. And she did an amazing job, walking the trail and making it. But I could sense also that she didn't want to disturb anyone else's journey by saying, like, maybe I need to go back, or, I don't know if I can really make it all the way down, and maybe I need a ride. And it really triggered this reminder of to get outside of myself because I'm like, oh, I'm happy for any adventure and it doesn't really cross my mind. Like I would rather walk anywhere than get a ride, but it's not about, us. It's about
Yes.
thinking of these different, everyone's experience, everyone's perspective, really having options. I think that maybe is one of the main keys. Have options for your attendees, so they can choose what's best for their process, their body, and even beyond physically. Maybe someone is really processing something deep and they just want some alone time. So they want to go back to the bus or a car to have some space, have options for your people because
Mm.
that's going to go a long way in terms of creating a caring, empathic, compassionate container.
Yeah,
So
beautifully said. How you describe that and where I open reminds me of like a really good yoga class. Well, with a very skilled, seasoned instructor who, no matter the level of the class, will always offer the options, right? And the blocks and the modifications, and it's such a conscious perspective of, some days, even as an advanced yogi, as an example, because I've gone through seasons when I have felt more of that identity and mobility, and just because I was more devoted to my practice. And so I have that range and other times I'm like, man, I haven't been in a class for 6 months and it's like starting over and just recognizing the humility of that but wanting to still be in that same class and really appreciating all the ways in which I can modify, and just I'm so empathic at this point and just feeling into the sensitivities of someone who's like, can I get a block? You know? and just being like those really beautiful teachers that just know like to have all the blocks out or to say, everyone just get a block just in case,
Mhm.
just equitable,
Equitable.
equitable participant needs and diversity. I love that. There's so much more that we could talk about here, but I do want to move on because there's a lot around structure and activities. It kind of lends itself to what we were just talking about. So keeping all those things in mind, but actually, I'd love for you to start, and then I'll share kind of what I've been doing the past 3 retreats that's really transformed my experience as a quote facilitator. And I even let go of that term, like because of this. So, structure and activities, what's coming through for you?
Mhm. So again, depending on the intention of the particular retreat or immersion, it may have more structure or less structure. So for example, the Expand Peru immersion is going to have more structure because there's more activity. That's more like spiritual training. Versus, quintessence, you're going to be learning in Belize, you're going to be learning in that embodied space in different ceremonies, but there's more spaciousness. So again, it's actually similar to the, how the themes come through me. I ask and I feel into what is the balance of masculine and feminine energy woven into the structure or the itinerary of this particular immersion or retreat? So I love to start the morning with meditation and movement, movement and stillness, yin or yang and yin, and to really meet the body, meet the energy, meet the spirit, and have someone be in their practice. So that's for me, that's like a standard, whatever that is. It could be a short meditation and grounding if we have to go somewhere really early, or it may be a longer session. And then I love to have, some kind of ritual or ceremony at night, to close the day. So almost like each day that's created is like its own ceremony. There's an opening, there's a ritual, there's a practice, there's the journey of the day. It may be again, have more structure if we're out, but if not, if you're at a resort, for example, there's going to be more spaciousness, and then closing, in the evening, whether that's ceremony or some kind of ritual. But it really varies from experience to experience, depending on what the intention of the container is.
Yeah, so beautiful. So some of the things that the Google added for us to consider, well, and also for our listeners and viewers. So under structure and activities, balance between structured sessions, workshops, guided meditations, talks, and then free time for reflection. So everything that you just said. And then also incorporate nature-based activities when applicable, if desired, creative expression, journaling, group discussions, and small group sharing. And that's separate than community building. So we're going to get there in a moment. But what I wanted to offer is setting the container in terms of I'll spend 30, 40 hours creating the vision on like Notion. I work with Notion. It's like a Google Doc, but it's got some other bells and whistles. And I will literally, and I was inspired by this by my friend Anastasia, who's an impeccable retreat space keeper, holder, healer, just incredible medicine woman. She changed my life when she shared her process. And it was this, and it's just adding like literally everything is accounted for from the altars that would be changed because I love working with an altar when I can, and I usually can on my retreats, and just the ceremony space and the song that'll go with any particular moment, opening or closing a ritual, or just so nuanced. I mean, every moment, just from the first moment they arrive and some sort of like an energetic cleansing with sacred smoke to the last moment that they're leaving with some food to go and being encouraged to keep the frequency right alive, and as they're traversing through traffic and airports, etc., and then what to sort of how to be when we get home, just allowing for yourself to arrive in your community or your home, but really opening up the conversation with your loved ones about how are you, how have you been the last few days, and then sharing, right? So this is kind of all over the place, but I wanted to share that while I do that, what I learned in April of 24 in Ojai, California, this most incredible land that when I drove up on 110 acres, I just immediately started weeping with gratitude because it just asked us to rise to the occasion, to expand into the Topa Topa Mountains and surrender fully, just like let it all go. And I realized that I was to let go of the entire itinerary. And so while we kept some of the things in the blueprint on the schedule, what I noticed in that moment was my truest gift was to be in the synergy of the women's energy and what was coming through and what wanted to emerge. And this is also community building too, that we're going to get to in a moment. But trusting that I could let go of some of like the ritual, the workshops, the structure, and that I could allow for this moment to just extend.
Mm,
And then recognizing that like it would evolve into a puddle of love and
mm,
touch and safe intimacy, just sisterhood healing. And but if
mm,
I would have been ready to go to the next thing exactly on time, which is how I used to operate, I
mm,
would have missed that nudge from God, you
mm,
know? And
mm,
so this is something you can't necessarily teach. It's called holding sacred space, allowing yourself to meet the moment, not meeting the moment, like allowing just like you're meeting the moment. The moment is asking for this. Can you recognize it? Can you attune to the frequency
mm,
of the co-creative process? It's the land, the house, the hotel, the women. It's just so
mm.
I'm so humbled by that. And now this is how I plan my retreats. I've got the whole thing to the song,
Yeah.
and then I just let it go,
Mm,
and then I kind of went too far the other way. Like the last retreat, I mean, they wouldn't say that, but I felt like, oh, we were so loose.
right,
So now
right.
we're gonna come back.
Come on back in.
Where's the gentle guardrails? We gotta have someone looking out for our container. Um,
Right.
yeah, so anyway, yeah, it's so good. Let's move into community building. And this is like the sort of perfunctory, designing of icebreakers and those types of activities and opportunities for meaningful connection and really important for both of us, I know, is fostering that sense of belonging, which is what they're looking for the most. They think it's Peru, they think it's Egypt, they think it's Malibu or Ojai and some of my retreat destinations. But what they come to realize is that it's about a sense
Right.
of belonging and wanting to feel seen. So anything that you want to expand on there?
Yeah, there's a beautiful practice. And I think I learned this practice from my yoga training like many years ago. More of a therapeutic yoga, trauma informed yoga. From one of my first teachers, Amy Weintraub, who wrote an amazing book, Yoga for Depression. And it's just really practical, these beautiful embodied ancient practices to help us really heal our psycho-emotional imbalances.
Mhm.
And so it's called the I am, practice. So that's what I call it now. And it's all about free associating and being in partnership. So you get a
Mhm.
partner, and you take turns. So one person will um, lie down and get in a really beautiful, meditative, comfortable position.
Mhm.
And their partner will whisper into their ear, who are you?
Oh.
Are who are you?
Mm.
And just words will come out, different, and it may be anything from angry, pissed, unworthy, sad, to, you know, God, bliss, abundance. And it's just, it helps to unravel the
Mhm.
subconscious mind And what we begin to see, to your point, is that we're so much more similar than we are different. The common denominator between our humanity comes right up and out. Um, and usually I do this exercise maybe a couple days in. So some of the ego defenses have softened. We've done some icebreakers. There's been, connection, beautiful circles have happened. And so it's just incredibly healing. And so there's a progression from there, but I'll pause there because it can be a very, very powerful exercise to weave into a retreat if the retreat intention is to be therapeutic in that way, because I also want to mention not all retreats go there, you know
Exactly.
and it
Exactly.
doesn't have to. There's access points for wherever you are on the path.
Yeah, I love that. And I also really wanted to take a moment to highlight that you said, really honoring the progression of the retreat. And that's, again, a vision, right?
Yeah.
That's the structure and the activities of just like, okay, where do we start and then where do we wrap? And we know the arc, the evolutionary arc, because we've done this enough, of how they arrive and how they exit is just, the container's been held well. It's it's not even recognizable, the frequency.
Mhm.
I kind of throw people into the deep end night one. I mean, not as deep as they're going to be at the end, but like, yeah, we're not fucking around. So like, what's an example of one of your favorite icebreakers? Or actually, a better way to ask that is an icebreaker that has been highly effective in
Ooh.
sort of breaking down some of that armor.
Yeah, this is so good. Hmm. So, I love self-inquiries, and there's something about off the bat, really, and it to me it's simple. I mean, it's very simple icebreaker of I don't even call it an icebreaker. It's just, it's really opening of the circle, opening of the portal.
That's right.
Um, we create a collective altar. So I use
Mhm.
a lot with my mesa from Peru. And so everyone energetically is a part of that altar because we've all come to co-create this experience together. And we happen to be the space holders,
Mhm.
sacred space holders. And so I have everyone put their sacred object, which I've, asked them to bring a sacred object that symbolizes what their intention is or what body of work or healing they are claiming for themselves, what change they're claiming for themselves, what intention to put that on the altar. So that's one of the first things we do that first evening is to create the collective altar and then I activate it. But it's so beautiful to see when it's like energetically, when we get in that circle, there's this kind of magical, accelerated,
Mhm.
walls come down, automatically because of, again, the collective energy and the frequency in that circle. So that, sharing their intention and the sacred object, creating that altar. Um, and then, sometimes we use like a mirror to reiterate, the intention and reflect that back to them.
Mhm.
And then there's different creative things you can do with the mirror in terms of mirror exercises, but yeah, simple but really powerful.
Yeah, those, but see, it's the simplest teachings, the simplest truths that are so foundational, that are highly overlooked in most people's experiences and or facilitation because they're like, oh, it's so simple, it's so trite, everyone's done it. But it's like, yeah, but do you do it?
Right. It
And
doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. And the energetic that you're bringing to it, if you're bringing soft and like presence, then
Hmm.
it's as if you've never done it again. Like we do altar creation, co-creation as well. It's just my favorite. And then there's a living altar that I'll keep next to where I would classically sit. And for a while there, I was unattached to having the same spot. But then I realized, no, I'll keep one spot and they can feel free to move around. But a living altar is, what are you claiming and intending for this day of the retreat? So there's the main altar for us as a collective, and then there's individual altars. So it could be like, today I really want to heal this wound with my grandmother, or really
Mm,
connect with, my deceased pet, or, so it's just like this living altar. And I also want to thank Anastasia for bringing that to my awareness, because I love it. And I work with an altar on a daily, in a
mm,
daily practice. So that's been helpful. But like, again, something so simple and so quote trite is eye gazing.
I love that.
Just eye gazing, like, and yeah, really connecting in that way. So these are
Mm,
things to consider. There's lots of these things you can look up online, y'all. But we'll continue through our list because we are getting close to wrapping. We are talking about, let's see, we've got several choices here. I'm going to just choose one. We've actually already covered location and environment. I want to talk about self-care and relaxation. We've already also talked about logistics and planning,
mhm.
self-care and relaxation. And then I'd love you to briefly touch on post support, post retreat, or post immersion support. And maybe before all of that. No, let's do that first. And then I'd love to hear where you've also grown the most, like maybe a big challenge that's come up for you that could be very useful for our viewers and listeners, that you had to also meet yourself and grow, like in the moment, like level up. And this is going to happen at every retreat, I can guarantee it, and that's part of the medicine.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome. So, okay, so tell me again where we're
Yeah,
starting on.
so let's see. It is self-care and relaxation, just scheduling that dedicated time, providing opportunities. We've touched on this, but if there's anything that you want to weave in a deeper way.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the intention of the retreat. And again, if it's a true retreat and you're at one location, especially, it's so it again, it's simple. It's so important to create spaciousness. And again, we even in our mind, we're so attached to content, like the teaching and the practice and the filling the space. Look at our schedules, look at our calendars. It's no different on a retreat or when you're creating and planning a retreat. We can be so attached to the content. Some of the most potent medicine is in the integration, and the integration can only happen when there's adequate spaciousness.
Yeah.
It's like being in the womb, the rebirth of being in that just pure presence of yourself. Because when you're not cognitively being, engaged, or you're not, rushing from one class to another session or another activity, there you are. Wasn't it John Kabat-Zinn that said, wherever you go, there you are?
Yeah.
And this is why the spaciousness is so key. I mean, it is the meditation that will invite you into a deeper communion with yourself, with your soul.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about these kinds of retreats, right? This wouldn't be
Right.
appropriate for an adventure immersion
Right.
like Expand Peru or some of the other things that we've done. Yeah, and one of the things that was coming through for me is you were sharing is just this over prepping, planning, curating that can almost be an extension of, this is my worthiness in action, right? It's like I got a packet full of quote content and activities and keep them busy so that I feel compensated for in their investment, so that it feels like that's the exchange. And it's like, my retreats, when they really started to shift for women in terms of the reflection that I was getting back and the sustainable transformations that these women were reflecting and then continuing to come back and telling all their friends, is there's so much spaciousness for sacred rest. There's more almost of that. I don't think it's quite more, but it's balanced almost 50-50, because you're right. It's the relational dynamics. It's dropping into your own pure presence and pure essence. And who can you be, without all that? And we also, um, this is something that I haven't done, but I'll be doing on my upcoming retreat in literally a month. I'm inviting anyone who's willing to offer their cell phone to the babysitter, a little basket for the day until we close the circle for the end of that day.
Beautiful. I
Yeah.
love, yeah,
Love that, right?
love it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that's good. Okay. Post-retreat support, and then one story that maybe you would like to share around when you've been challenged and it's grown you.
So post-retreat support. So we're everyone who attends, I usually create a WhatsApp group. So there's that. But I always do a virtual I always do a virtual integration. And that, I mean, it really allows the circle to come back together. Um, it reinforce, I help to reinforce some of the practices because it's really when you go home, how are you going to continue to cultivate that frequency and to maintain this centeredness that you've created, these new capacities or new activations that have unfolded. So a lot of times we'll kind of revisit. It's almost like a retracing of some of those really potent practices and ways. Really, it's practical ways to continue to perpetuate and cultivate those energies and the intentions. For various retreats, immersions, I create a workbook. So they have that physical piece with practices in them, with teachings in them that they can continue to revisit long after the experience is over.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that idea. I haven't done that. I like it. Um, yeah, for us, same. A post-retreat conversation on Zoom typically, and it's an integration circle. And um, yeah, and it's a revisiting of the highlights. And also I'll typically spotlight someone. We'll play the same song that moved us the most, right? And just put them in the center of the Zoom and just receive that love for like, just a few seconds and then move to the next person, just like, just experience that connection that they really loved and didn't want to leave, by the time they got over that first night of like, these are not my people.
When can I book my flight back?
Exactly. I'm outta here.
Mm,
But yeah, I would, because this most recent retreat, just kind of weaving into the very end of this conversation, this most recent retreat was my most challenging. It was my deepest medicine I've ever served myself on a soul level, because it grew me and it challenged me the most. And it was hard, 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 and it was blissful beyond words.
mm,
And therein lies the paradox of the beauty of life.
mhm,
But not everyone is necessarily prepared for those moments. And so this is why I really believe in having a space holder for you as the retreat facilitator. So I do that intentionally now. And someone is able to hold me and has the capacity to hold whatever might have happened that day, that I can just spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes sharing, venting, expressing, crying, whatever needs to happen, because it will. And then that's it. Or just sometimes just got me like, you got this, right? Like it's like, gotcha, and just like, I just want to feel seen, because it's a lot to hold in moments, and then it's just life.
mhm.
And I'm happy to share a specific if there's time, but I really want to hear about your story.
Yeah. So one of the biggest ways that I've been really expanded into my next level and the rub point was alchemizing, letting go of taking responsibility of others' emotions and experiences.
Yeah.
This connects with the perfectionist. It connects with the shadow side of the caregiver, the shadow side of the divine mother, which I carry a lot of
Yes.
divine mother energy. And so guiding retreats and immersions for over a decade has been a perpetual container and ceremony for me to continue to untangle myself from that attachment to taking responsibility for someone else's experience.
Mm.
Yes, I take responsibility for the sacredness of the container, but in terms of what's coming up for someone, not protecting them against the uncomfortable emotions or dynamics or trauma that may be coming up to be healed, to be addressed. And so the story that comes to mind is when I guided, it was such a sacred journey. I mean, I was in my own, again, dark night. This was during the beginning stages of my divorce from my first husband. Um, and of course, I was guiding a trip to India, one of the most potent, fiery, alchemical sacred lands. And for Diwali, we were there during Diwali. And I remember we were in the sacred pilgrimage city of Varanasi on the Ganges River um, at dusk. It was just turning night, and we were watching, the arti, the beautiful ceremonies and um, just music and gathering on the shore of Varanasi. And part of the sacred rituals, the honoring that they have around death is so sacred and so potent. And one of my long-term clients was there, and she in her 20s and just lovely, lovely woman and had gone through, she initially came to me because she went through a very traumatic loss of her mother, who is like her world. Her mom was in the entertainment industry, and it was a very kind of very sudden and traumatic loss.
Mm.
So my client was sitting, on the boat and watching, the bodies being washed in the Ganges on the bank, and she had a complete, um, I would call it an ego fracture, where just her anger was ignited. So much grief and anger around the loss of her mother. And of course, our dynamic, I held very maternal space for her in the womb in order for her to continue, processing and moving through. She was in a very kind of developmentally powerful time in her life. And she was pissed at me. She felt betrayed. I mean, all of these emotions, of course, were coming up and out to be transformed. And in that moment, I went into, all of the self-doubt and how I could have protected her from this uncomfortable experience. And I mean, this was about, not 8, 9 years ago. And so it really put me back into that place of really seeing, how I was taking responsibility for her emotional experience when in fact that was exactly what she needed to see. And by the end of the trip, she, was radiant and in full rebirth mode and wanted to stay longer in India even. But it was a really powerful healing for her and for myself. The medicine that I received was, tremendous in that experience. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. There's probably 100 of those stories, and I'm really remiss that we are at time because I feel like we could share these stories and it would be so useful for those who A, were like, thank God I'm not alone, right? Or B, like, okay, I'm so grateful that I'm aware that this is happening. Here's some ways that I can approach that or be with that when it's on my path. And the one thing that I would say that I just want to quickly weave in is if we're serving medicine or you're having someone come in to serve medicine, and the safer that someone feels with you because of how sacred the container has been or how open it's been, there is a big possibility, especially in a women's retreat, that some women there'll be that mother wound exchange, right? And it could come toward you as the facilitator. And in that moment, recognizing that again, you don't need to take responsibility for their experience, but let them have their experience.
Right.
Let them be in the experience, like go in it, like tell me more about that.
Mm.
And that moment of being able to pause and recognize that this is not about you, it doesn't have to be about you unless you choose to make it be about you. And I got snagged by that once.
Mm-hmm.
Felt vile and just mean and so that's what I did for a moment. And then I was able to unwind from that and be like, whoa, this is amazing. They're in it. They might not even know they ever did this tomorrow,
Right.
right? Because they're in the medicine.
Yeah.
And so just being able to hold that container steady, that is a level of a spiritual warrior.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when you will know you are leveling up. And I got to say, I'm getting better at this. And I have not been very good at this in other moments. And I've been triggered and activated and went into a room once and cried. And, but then it's just like every time I show up on these retreats and I want to go deep, vertical, right? It's like, all right, bring it on for me too. So whatever you want to create, just know that you must be willing to step into that first as the embodiment.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Ooh, this is such a potent conversation.
Go on and on.
On and on. And I know you've got to go. So, okay, as we are like literally at time, I'd love for you to share about your upcoming retreat. I'm not an affiliate. I may be involved at some point. We don't know yet, but I just also really honor what's happening in Belize and then best ways to connect with you.
Right. So, yeah. So, my upcoming immersion is Quintessence, Path of the Revolutionary Medicine Woman in Placencia, Belize. It's August 6th through 11th of this year. And it's really for women who are ready to step into the next level embodiment of their medicine in the world as an instrument of healing, transformation, leadership, whatever that means for you, whether you're the leader of your household, um, business, community, and it's going to be a beautiful container connected to the Mayan lineage. So one of my beloved friends and sisters, Rosario Ponte, is one of the co-facilitators, co-leaders, and she'll be there sharing this potent wisdom of her lineage. So I'll be there as well, holding space and teaching, but really in a lot of these containers, especially the ones abroad, I am really a bridge, for those who are called to the ancient teachings and lineages from around the world. So we'll be in various ceremonies and learning about plant medicines, and many of them, not psychedelic. So if you're interested in learning more about earth medicine and stepping into that divine feminine leader, then this may be for you.
Oh, so good. So good. I definitely want to be there at some point. Maybe it'll be this year. Soul Essence Retreat, my women's retreat is coming up in about a month. So listening to this in real time, there are two spots, one private room, one semi-private. It's February 20th as we record in real time. This will come out early next week. And this is an opportunity to truly just drop into the frequency of your soul. Like there's a lot of spaciousness. We do work with medicine, a heart opener, flower medicine, and then we move into a deeper journey if you feel called. And it's impeccably held by my spiritual teachers that I have journeyed with many times. And really what ultimately comes through is like your essence, which is your gifts. And then a lot of times there's so much clarity of like, this is the medicine, these are the gifts to share in my community with the world, just how I will show up in service and deepening into my dharma. And so that is available, and it's all inclusive luxury, the whole thing, which I know yours are as well. And so yeah, so those are our offerings at the moment. And then how's the best way to find you for anyone who feels called?
Yeah, so my website is lenafranklin.com. So you can explore all the different various offerings and ways to connect with me there. And then on all social media channels, my handle is at I am Lena Franklin. So I'd love to connect with you.
Mm. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming on today and for exploring in these waters with me. Like, this was so needed. I feel full, and I'm really hoping if you guys got value, please let us know, like, or any other questions that you might have, because we can come on and do another drop in on this.
Love it.
But this was really beautiful. Thank you, Lena.
Thank you so much for having me, sister.
Mm.